Hey guys, how's it going? Jay Sensational here, and welcome back to the channel. For today, we are going to be featuring 8 decks after the first week of the expansion that I think are all pretty good, they're pretty fun, and I think are all viable decks to start considering if you want to climb during this meta. So without further ado, let's just kick things off and jump right into it. So for the first deck here, we're gonna first look at some of the more aggressive decks because I think, if you're looking to climb, while people are still lollygagging around playing some new decks, a lot of copium-filled decks, you can sort of punish these players in doing so. And the first deck we have here is Ziggs Gnar. This is very, very similar to the Ziggs Poppy list much earlier on a few seasons ago. If you remember when Poppy was still a 4-3, this deck was very, very prevalent, a Yordle burn, if you want to call it. Still the same deck, runs all the same cards, except now we are able to add in the really strongly statted and synergistic transform cards. So mainly, we are starring Gnar instead of Poppy. Gnar is just so insane in these kind of decks, because not only does it A, give you a Poke Stick, which is one additional burn and card draw, and B, has quick attack, and C, it has overwhelm and grants vulnerable. So in this sort of deck, it not only up trades, but it also is able to push you a lot of damage so long as you're able to level up Gnar. Right now, not a lot of decks are actually featuring many ways of dealing with Gnar, and if you can just level Gnar, that's almost the guaranteed decimate while still retaining a board advantage over your opponent. And the second really insane card is Teeny Dactyl, for the same reasons that Gnar is so good, because not a lot of decks can really just deal 3 damage to kill it on turn 4, turn 5. Teeny Dactyl becomes a 6/5 and starts pinging down your opponent turn after turn as well. So these two cards just provide a lot of pressure overall against your opponent, and turn after turn, you just really grind your opponent down, and of course you have Burn over the top, where again, not a lot of decks have healing either. This particular version is running Bitsy Lizard. I didn't really see this when I pulled it into here, but that's probably a little bit more flexible. We can run some other sort of card in that slot. I haven't really tried this one out, but this deck does have a few flex slots. You can run like Bandle City Mayor, you can run some more value, or you can run a little bit more burn. I've seen like Legion Grenadier, or I've seen like a Brothers Bond in here. So there's definitely a little bit of flex room within this deck. But if you want to go a little bit more into the transform package, the Bitsy Lizard is just a little bit cute of a stat stick. The second deck we have here is Scout. So this list was played by the Black Boss, a very, very good player. Seasonal champion. Brazilian, but very, very good. And he was the second player to hit Masters in NA this season, or AM, shall I say, this season, using the Scouts list we have here. There's not a lot of change to Scouts overall. They're not featuring any of the new champions, but what Demacia did get was some really, really insane cards. And those two cards are Durant Sculptor, which is the 2-drop, the 2/2 that grants every unit you summon +1 health, as well as Petricide Broadwing, just a 2-mana 3/3 challenger with Formidable. These two cards are so insane and so snowbally that if you're unable to kill Sculptor, suddenly your opponent's board can just suddenly uptrade almost anything. Playing your 3-drops, 4-drops, getting like a 2/1 to a 2/2, or like a 3/4 into a 3/5, your Quinn into a 3/6, your MF into a 3/4. Just so insane, because the only way you can really deal with Scout is by killing all the champions, the big threats. And now once you're adding 1's health to each of the breakpoints, and suddenly you can now use Sharpsight and Ranger's Resolve to protect them, it suddenly becomes a whole lot harder to kill them. Of course, this is a standard Demacia rally deck, so any control style slower deck will just generally fold over to the Aegis, the Golden Aegis, the rally card, and now that you have a lot harder time removing the enemy units, because now cards like Withering Well or Avalanche might not clear all their units because the Sculptor is now giving them extra health. This deck is just generally a really huge menace, and I think really Petricide Broadwing is probably the biggest offender out of here. Just being a 2-mana 3/3 challenger paired with Misfortune can just suddenly deal 4 damage to almost any unit, or even just trade 2 for 1. It's just so insane. And this deck does prove to be very strong as a result of it being the second deck to hit Masters. But definitely very, very powerful, and will probably be a huge threat later in the season. The third deck we have here is a Faint HD special. The last deck was the second deck to hit Masters. This is the first deck to hit Masters. This is Fizz Gnar Yordle in Arms. So going from the old Fizz Lulu Jordan arms to the Fizz Gnar Jordan arms, we have again a very similar choice and selection of cards here. Mainly difference is the ballistic bot, just being able to proc the Gnar and just being able to generate a little bit extra burn over the turns, and Wallop. I have found Wallop to be quite underrated. It just seems so insanely powerful. This is definitely not a card that I expected to really be main decked, but now as I'm playing a lot more games, even playing decks that are main decking Wallop, the ability to stop like a big unit, especially when a lot of decks are sort of centric around these big mid-rangey threats like Galio, or even just like these Papercraft Dragon decks that just aim to kill you in one turn. Wallop just seems really, really powerful to supplement and stall out your game plan, because with these kind of decks, you just need to like survive one turn, and then the next turn you Yordle arms, push down your opponent's health total, and then just have burn to finish it off. There's just likely one or two key turns that you need to survive in, and Wallop is a really good card to help you do that. So this deck is functioning really, really standardly. It has the Swarm with the Bandle City and the PNZ, the Boon Baboon into the Zonite Urchin, and the Yordle arms to kind of finish things off. We've cut down on a little bit more of the top end, like the Yordle Captains, the Lulus, and in place we have Gnar and a little bit extra burn in order to just really, really race down your opponent faster. The main key game plan here is just rush them down with elusives. We have the Fizz, we have the Portal Cannon, and the Yordle arms, and we have Gnar for just a little bit extra damage as well as removal, which is really, really insane. Again, featuring Gnar in a very, very powerful shell. Now we covered some of the more aggressive decks, we have a little bit more of the combo plus control decks. And the first one I want to showcase to you guys here is Akshan Gnar. This is a Papercraft Rune Runner Gnar deck. This is featured and made popularized by my good friend teammate What Am I? He was, I think, the first one to just really stick onto this, and then kind of just exploded off from there. Me and my teammates played it, and then suddenly I see on Runeterra AR, and now I think it's kind of all over the place. Again, this is very centric around the Papercraft combo with both Gnar as well as Runner. But what's really interesting is that within the Shrima Bandle City region combination, you get access to Deny as well, so being the right of negation, as well as some nice metrics such as Shape Zone as well as the Absolver that really supplement our game plan. So even if we are unable to stick a Gnar or a Rune Runner with the Papercraft Dragon, any unit suddenly becomes a threat with Absolver plus Papercraft Dragon. And we have a lot of good cheap units to synergize with our game plan. We have the Akshan, which gives us a landmark to proc Shapestone, but it also gives us an extra card draw and extra predict off of the Horde. We have Aspiring Chronomancer just to predict and smoothen out our curve, find our key combo units, and we just have overall really good one drops such as the Chemist, Ping on Chemist if you played on turn 1, Ox Gnar level up on turn 4. So it's actually a really, really cool combo. Treasure Seeker, of course, just being a very solid streamer card, being able to summon a 5/2 for 2, being able to pressure down your opponent, and the Yordle Square giving us the potential of a little bit extra reach, or even just helping us trigger our Akshan landmark. It's like a super, super synergistic, super, super cool. I did feature it on my channel as the first deck of the day, but the deck has seen a few iterations, and now this is the latest version that I'm happy to share with you guys. The second deck we have here is a Swim Special. If you guys haven't seen this, this is a really, really niche interaction with field promotion as well as the attached cards. So field promotion reads when you summon a unit, grants its scout. And the really cool thing about using this in pair with an attuned or an attached card such as either Yuumi or Quick Quill or Rainbow Fish is that attach unit, just specifically the attach unit, will gain scout and grant whatever unit it attaches onto scout as well. And now the second crazy part is that if you kill the unit that it's attached onto and you get the attached unit back, the attached card still has scout on it. So this is a permanent scout effect card, and you can just attach onto unit turn after turn and just have an overall threat around the game. And of course, we have rallies as the Golden Ages, and even 3 Cataclysm to proc a rally with a scout unit as well. Again, such an insane combo-oriented deck. I haven't actually played this myself, but if Swim tells you that it's good, I think it's worth a feature in the top 8 decks to try out after week 1. But overall, just a very, very standard sort of Bandle Swarm deck, but it's surrounding this insane combo with field promotion and if you can, onto Quick Will. The next deck we have here is the Concurrent Trundle Timelines deck. This is popularized by Brazilian player 4LW. I believe he was the 4th person to hit Masters this season. So, a lot of these decks are featuring some of the best players hitting Masters early on. So it could be, the results might be skewed slightly because of just how good these players are. But I believe that all the decks so far, and the decks that they use to climb to Masters, are certified bangers and good in power level. So this abuses the combo of concurrent timelines plus the ice play from Trundle just to swing 2 8-drops in the same turn and challenge down your opponent's board. What I think really ties this deck together as a sort of pseudo-tempo control deck is the fact that Buried in Ice is just so prevalently strong right now in the meta. Again, a lot of these big mid-range Demacia decks, or even any deck after you go wide on your board, because we're so tempo-oriented, we can do combos like Ice Pillar plus the concurrent timelines into Buried in Ice on the same turn, and now suddenly we're threatening down to swing on our opponent with a full board. It's very similar to how Pack Your Bags worked back in the day, just being able to hold up a threat that wiped your entire opponent's board while maintaining your own board is just so powerful. And even in more control style oriented or in more control oriented game plans, we can even use It That Stares to blow up all the landmarks, or even use Aftershock depending on where we need it. The deck is super flexible in how it's on play. It can play really hard for tempo off of the concurrent timelines, or it can even play a little bit slower, going after the Buried in Ice, It That Stares combos if your opponent overdevelops and tries to greed into it. So overall, the deck functions really, really cool. It's just, you stick units onto the board, you remove them. You can get really good trades off of Troll Chant. Gnar, again, very, very good in these sort of control tempo-oriented game plans. Being able to trade down, being able to gain value, it's sort of the perfect card in here, and it's really what this deck really needed coming into the expansion. So definitely really, really fun deck. You can't go wrong with concurrent timelines. Actually, that's not true. But you can't go wrong while having a good time with concurrent timelines. I released a video on this the other day, so be sure to check that out as well. So the 7th deck we have here is a Bandle tree list. So this is played by Badge Attack in Fight Nights. He had really good success with it, really good success with it on ladder, and I think it is a pretty good contender within the meta, simply because of sort of how Bandle tree works. A lot of control decks, the ones that obviously don't run landmark removal, just don't really have good ways of dealing with Bandle tree, and so this sort of game plan is just really a powerful and polarizing against those strategies, especially because a lot of these aggro decks are really strong right now, like the Ziggs Burn, etc., but they still sort of falter against control. This sort of anti-control list can be very, very powerful. We did get a few new cool tools, being the Blastcone Seedling, so this is just another Ionia card you can run within your deck. And a lot of the cards in this deck, such as Buster Shot, is actually a really, really good answer against opponent's Gnars. So being able to have just a flexible removal with cards like Flock, Raven, Scorched Earth, Group Shot, Pokestick, and the Buster Shot, as well as the Mini Morph, while also having a very board-centric game plan of your own, makes it very hard for aggro decks to just rush you down, while you also having some pretty decent removal into sort of the more mid-rangey cards. Again, the Bandle tree is just a very, very strong card against a lot of these control matchups right now, and can just often or not win you games by itself alone. So definitely a sort of very, very strong sort of anti-pick to the meta. As you see more control decks rolling in, you'll see a lot more Bandle tree coming in as well. And for the last deck that I wanted to feature here, this is Gnar Swain. I think this is a deck that has just kicked up a pretty big storm. On the first couple days of the expansion, it was boasting a really, really high win rate. It's dropped a little bit since, but overall, again, I think that it just features some really, really powerful cards right now that are dealing with the meta pretty well. So the first thing is just the Noxus removal card. Cards like Flock have always been extremely well into a lot of these more mid-range metas. So when you have cards, decks like Scouts, the Galio decks, things like that, just having the cards such as Flock, Scorched Earth as removal is just really, really insane because of how efficient they are in dealing with a much bigger units relative to their cost. Again, we are also featuring some really good mid-range sort of tempo cards with things like Gnar as well as Teeny Dactyl, just being able to bulk up the board on turn 4 by placing down an overstated unit can be really powerful, especially with how easy it is for us to trigger their effects. We have cards like Poison Dart, Pokestick, just a wide swarm of Bandle City stuff like the House Spider, the Conchologist, the Telescopes. Just a really easy way of getting that damage in, allows us to proc our 4-drops really conveniently. And so this is definitely a very strong sort of game style, while also having very flexible removal depending on the meta. You can run the more mini morphs, you can run more guillotines, whatever it may be. You have some pretty efficient removal for these more mid-range sort of metas. That's going to wrap it up for the 8 decks that I want to feature for you guys. This is a look at the first week of the expansion, and these are sort of the uprising decks that I think are doing pretty well. For the other champions that weren't featured, namely Udyr, I would not recommend it to anybody. Sorry for the Udyr fans out there. But Udyr has just not been picking it up. It's between a 30 to 40% win rate kind of deck champion, and I just have no deck in good faith I can recommend to you guys. Yuumi is still struggling to find a little bit of its ground, and Galio, while still like very powerful, I could have put a Galio deck into here. It's still figuring out where it wants to be, whether it be with Braum, whether it be with Soraka, Argan, or in Freljord. It's still sort of up in the air, but I ultimately do think Galio and Freljord is a little bit better. But I think later on within the weeks, I'll feature another sort of iteration of this, and hopefully you'll see Galio doing a little bit better later on. But again, this is just a quick first glance at the first week of the meta. Some 8 decks that I think are rising in popularity and are pretty strong. And I'd recommend for you guys to give it a play. So that will wrap up the video from my side. If you did enjoy this video, please do leave and like and subscribe. Your support so far this past week since the expansion has been absolutely insane, and I am super thankful for that. But I'll end off here, and I hope you guys have a good time playing the game. Catch you guys later.